Hi everyone, I'm Prabhat, co-founder at InvestMyFund. Welcome to a new episode, Know Your Fund Manager. Today we have Aakash Manghani, Senior Fund Manager at Trust Mutual Fund. With over 15 years of experience in financial market, currently Aakash is taking care of the equity fund at Trust Mutual Fund. Welcome Aakash.
Thank you, Prabhat. Thank you for having me here.
Sure. Aakash, India is the fastest growing economy when we look at GDP perspective. How do you see India growing ahead for a 5 to 10 year perspective?
Thank you for the question, Prabhat. So today, like you rightly said, India is the fastest growing, not one of the, but actually the fastest growing economy in the world. Our economic growth last couple of years has been around 6.5%. Real GDP growth there है. Global GDP आप देखेंगे तो मुश्किल से 2% की growth आ रही है. Most advanced economies जो Western world में है, they are struggling to grow. जैसे US is growing at 2%. Large parts of Europe are struggling to grow at even 1%. Another large economy, China, is struggling to grow at 4%. There was a time in the last couple of years back, जो China का growth बड़ी रफ्तार से था, 9 to 10% they were growing, and they grew at 9 to 10% for the last 25-30 years. If you go back prior to COVID. So India is shining. We believe that this is India's decade. And not only the decade, but the next 15, 20, 25 years could well propel India to go from 5th largest to the 3rd largest. And that will happen probably in the next couple of years only. So a lot of things have changed in our country which has allowed us to grow so well. While it is difficult to get into every factor, but one of the biggest factors is if you look at the size of the population that we have, the demographic dividend that we have today. We have about 1.3, 1.35 billion population. Median age of our population is around 29. We are one of the youngest countries in the world. Even after 15, 20 years, our median age would not have increased much. Because of this demographic dividend, between 2024 and 2045, over the next 20 years almost, we will add almost 18 to 20 crore people to the working force. India will contribute disproportionately high to the entire global workforce. In countries like China, that working population over the next 20 years is coming down by almost 10 crores over the next 20 years. So this demographic dividend is a large consumer class. By the year 2030, we will have almost 1 billion people which will form part of India's middle class. Today, if you look at people living in either upper middle or middle class, that itself, the number of households is expected to go up by around 4 to 4.5 times in the next 5 to 6 years. So consumption is a very, very large part of our economy which has driven our growth and which will continue to drive growth. 55 to 60% of our economy is consumption linked. The balance, interestingly, is a lot to do with manufacturing, investments and things like that, and part agri. Agri is 15-16% and the balance is industries. The industry part of the economy was not doing very well in the prior decade. We believe that a resurgence is happening after COVID, specifically after 2021, and this has been led by government capex. Government capex बड़ी रफ्तार से पिछले 3-4 सालों से grow हुआ है, and now even private capex will pick up. So industry, manufacturing, investments, real estate, these kind of fixed asset creation वाले जो industries हैं, these will drive the economic growth over the next few years. तो पहले हमारा economic growth थोड़ा lopsided था in the previous decade, अभी थोड़ा balance हो जाएगा, and which will allow us to grow at 6.5 to 7% and maybe even more.
Aakash, what are the sectors you are looking at while building a portfolio for a 5 to 10 year perspective, and how do you see these sectors?
So there are a lot of sectors which are doing well today in our country. The options are actually many.
Yeah.
And thankfully, that's why it's a stock picker's delight and a stock picker's market. And India has always had many sectors to invest in. That is the unique part about our country, unlike most other emerging market countries where only 1 or 2 sectors dominate that country. Today we have multiple sectors which are firing at the same time. So let me tell you a few of the sectors that we are very bullish on. For example, consumption. We are very bullish on consumption, and consumption has been actually driving our economic growth for the last few years. But interestingly, in the last couple of years, because of the way our demographics have evolved, a lot of young population today, this is a very risk-taking population. They are, want to grab new trends. So we believe that premium consumption, which has done very well in the last 3-4 years, which will continue to do well.
Okay.
The way the economy is positioned today, हमारी आज जो GDP per capita है, $2,500 की है as of now. If you look at other economies, for example, China China's GDP per capita was at the same level as India's in the year 2006. They went from 2,500 GDP per dollar in 2006 to almost $10,000 by 2020.
20.
Over a 14-year time frame, their GDP went up at a CAGR of 12% GDP per capita.
Okay.
We believe that India is probably going to follow a similar trajectory, where from $2,500 we are headed towards $10,000.
Okay.
And this growth will happen at the rate of 9.5 to 10%. When that growth happened in China, a lot of sectors relating to premium consumption went up at a J curve. For example, there are things like SUVs, premium cars, premium two-wheelers, premium real estate. People are finding that 1.5 to 2.5 crore homes, 1.5 to 2.5 crore priced homes are doing much better than lower priced homes.
Yeah.
Premium cars are doing much better, right? Beauty, packaged food, travel, leisure. So there are multiple industries where we are seeing a J curve, and this will accelerate in the next decade. So consumption is one sector that we are very bullish, and there are several sub-segments to that. Another sector which I think will do very well is manufacturing.
Okay.
Manufacturing was doing well even prior to COVID, but only a handful of sectors. For example, chemical manufacturing. Today, what is happening is that there is a massive shift happening globally. India is there at the right place at the right time. What is that shift? A lot of global companies are moving their supply chains from China
to
and
India.
looking at alternatives.
Yeah.
And India is a very big viable alternative. Today, the cost of labor in India is much cheaper than China. And we actually, for the last 7-8 years, we've been cheaper than China. Today, people have valid reasons to move from China. China controls 50, 60, 70% of manufacturing supply chain in many industries, whereas India has barely 2 to 5% of global manufacturing supply chains in so many industries. So even if 5 to 10% of the share has to shift from China to India, and this will not happen overnight,
Yeah.
but it could take a decade or so, India's manufacturing sector in several industries could double. Today, the manufacturing GDP is about $500 billion out of $3.5 trillion. This, we believe, has the potential to grow much faster than the overall GDP of the country. So these are the two sectors out of many other sectors that we are bullish on.
इंडिया का जो यंग एज पॉपुलेशन है वो वर्ल्ड का हाईएस्ट है, तो क्या एडवांटेज हैं जो इंडिया को मिलेंगे गोइंग अहेड एज इंडिया 2000 पर कैपिटा जीडीपी को क्रॉस कर रहा है?
So like I said, हमारी जो population है, median age of the population is roughly around 29 years.
Yeah.
Our GDP per capita is $2,500. But हमारा जो GDP per capita है, that is very lopsided. So if you see the top 8-10% of population, they give us almost 30-40% of our GDP. This is the population where GDP per capita is $10,000 on an average.
Okay.
Then there is another population where the GDP per capita is around $3,500 to $4,000. This is again 1/3 of our GDP. Then the balance part of our population, which is about almost 1 billion people, there the GDP per capita is around $1,200 to $1,400. We believe what will happen in the next 5 to 10 years, ये जो middle class है इंडिया का, जो roughly 3 से 6 लाख कमा रहे हैं सालाना, ये 5 से 10 साल में ये upper middle class में चले जाएंगे. So ये जो massive shift होगा, this will drive consumption.
Okay.
And this will allow a lot of sectors to do well.
आकाश, हम देख रहे हैं कि जो वैल्यूएशंस हैं मार्केट में वो चीप नहीं हैं और देयर इज़ अ रैली इन अ मार्केट इन लास्ट 3 इयर्स और स्मॉल एंड मिड कैप के जो वैल्यूएशन हैं वो काफ़ी हाई हैं, तो कैसे आप आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे इन स्टॉक्स को और क्या स्ट्रेटेजी आप यूज़ करेंगे पोर्टफोलियो को बिल्ड करने के लिए?
So markets are at all time high, जैसे आपने पहले कहा, and this is actually a good sign.
Yeah.
Although in the last, I would say, a few days, markets have corrected and we've seen correction of maybe 5 to 6% at the broader market level. See, market in the long term is driven by earnings.
Yeah.
आप पिछले 5 साल, 10 साल या 20 साल का कुछ भी डेटा निकालो, and the longer you go, जैसे आप 10 से 15 साल की अगर टाइम फ्रेम देखेंगे historically, almost 70 to 80% of market returns are because of earnings. Balance could be because of valuation re-rating. ये पिछले 10 से 15 साल में हमने ये डेटा देखा है. तो अगले आपको अगर 10 से 15 साल का निवेश करना है, एंड मेरे ख्याल से इक्विटी में अगर कोई भी जुड़ रहा है मिड एंड स्मॉल कैप्स में स्पेसिफिकली ही शुड हैव अ 5 to 7 year horizon at a bare minimum. So उसके अगर आप उससे कम देख रहे हैं तो मे बी इक्विटी इज़ नॉट द राइट प्रोडक्ट फॉर यू. सो अगर आप लंबे समय के लिए आप निवेश कर रहे हो तो आपको ऐसी कंपनीज में इन्वेस्ट करना है जहाँ पर ग्रोथ स्ट्रांग हो. इंडिया इज़ अ हाई ग्रोथ इकोनॉमी. जैसे मैंने कहा था कि हमारी ग्रोथ 11-12% नॉमिनल जीडीपी की है. हमारे जो इंडेक्स की ग्रोथ है NSE 500 ले लें या निफ्टी 50 ले लें, ऑन एन एवरेज एक्सपेक्टेशन है कि 12 से 13% प्रॉफिट कंपाउंडिंग रहेगी अगले 2 से 3 साल में. हमें इस तरह की कंपनीज में इन्वेस्ट करना है, निवेश करना है जो अपने सेक्टर की सबसे लीडिंग कंपनीज हो, जिनमें 1.5 to 2.5 टाइम्स सेक्टर का ग्रोथ हो. अगर सेक्टर 15% से ग्रोथ हो रहा है तो ये कंपनीज 20, 25, 30% से ग्रो कर रही हैं. एंड ऐसे बहुत सारे कंपनीज हैं जिनमें हिस्ट्री ऑफ एग्जीक्यूशन बहुत स्ट्रांग है, उनकी कैपिटल एलोकेशन बहुत स्ट्रांग है एंड अगले कुछ सालों तक चलते रहेंगी. तो ये सब अगर आप देखेंगे, सेक्टर का ग्रोथ, इंडिया का एवरेज जो पीई मल्टीपल है वो आज की तारीख में हिस्टोरिकल पीई मल्टीपल से आपको एक्सपेंसिव दिखेगा. आप पिछले 10 या 15 साल का अगर पीई बैंड निकालेंगे तो टुडे इंडेक्स लेवल लार्ज कैप इंडेक्स इज एट 20-21 पी ऑन अ फॉरवर्ड बेसिस. स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स इज ऑल्सो अराउंड 22 पी. मिड कैप इंडेक्स थोड़ी महंगी हो गई है, अराउंड 28-29 पी पे चल रहा है. बट इंडिया की जो ग्रोथ प्रॉस्पेक्ट्स हैं टुडे आर वेरी स्ट्रॉन्ग एंड दे आर स्ट्रॉन्गर देन दे एवर वर. अगर आप पिछले 10-15 साल का देखेंगे, वी हैड लॉट ऑफ इश्यूज इन द पास्ट. आर डेट इक्विटी रेशियो एज अ इकोनॉमी एंड एज कॉर्पोरेट्स एज अ होल वाज वेरी हाई. ROE ऑफ इंडिया, जो रिटर्न ऑन इक्विटी है, इट यूज्ड टू बी 7 to 9% फॉर मेनी ईयर्स. आफ्टर कोविड इट बॉटम्ड आउट एंड टुडे ROE is at 15%. India has probably one of the highest ROEs in the world. The only country जिनका ROE return on equity हमारे से ज़्यादा है, which is US economy, which is at around 19%.
Okay.
Even China is at around 10 to 11%. So बहुत सारी चीज़ें change हो गई हैं. ROE is one thing which drives valuations along with growth. आपके पास दोनों हैं and काफ़ी सालों बाद दोनों एक साथ आ रहे हैं. So मेरे ख्याल से मार्केट का मल्टीपल जो 10-15 साल पहले होता था वो मल्टीपल आपको मिलेगा नहीं. मेरा अनुमान ये है. मार्केट्स हैव रैलीड इन द लास्ट 12 months क्वाइट अ बिट. सो मार्केट्स गो थ्रू दीज फेजेस ऑफ टाइम करेक्शन पीरियोडिकली. कभी टाइम करेक्शन होता है 6 महीने का, कभी 3 महीने का, कभी 1 साल का भी हुआ है. सो बट आपको सेक्टर्स, कंपनीज ढूंढने हैं जो थ्रू थिक एंड थिन दे कीप परफॉर्मिंग. तो हमारा यही होप रहता है टू फाइंड सच कंपनीज एंड वी बिलीव दैट मार्केट वैल्यूएशंस are not too expensive, they are not too cheap, they are at a level where there is enough opportunity for stock pickers.
Thank you, Aakash, for joining us and providing a valuable insight on small cap and India's growth story.
Thank you so much.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.